There comes a point when pretending becomes more exhausting than telling the truth. Your soulmate has reached that point. For a very long time, they believed they could keep their emotions hidden and continue moving through life as if nothing was happening beneath the surface. They became skilled at disguising what they felt. They learned how to appear calm when their heart was restless. They learned how to stay silent when there were things they desperately wanted to say. To the outside world, it seemed like they had everything under control. But what nobody could see was the quiet battle taking place inside them every single day. The truth is that your soulmate did not hide their feelings because they were weak. They hid them because the feelings were powerful enough to make them question decisions they thought were final, powerful enough to make them revisit memories they believed were behind them, powerful enough to challenge the walls they spent so much time building around their heart. At first, they thought silence would make these emotions fade. They thought distance would reduce their intensity. They thought enough time would eventually solve everything. But instead of disappearing, the feelings remained exactly where they started, waiting patiently beneath the surface. Recently, something has started changing. The effort required to keep these emotions hidden has become heavier than ever before. What once felt manageable now feels exhausting. What once felt easy to suppress now demands attention. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that some feelings are not meant to stay locked away forever. The more they try to ignore them, the stronger they seem to become. And for the first time, they are starting to wonder whether hiding the truth has actually been protecting them at all. That question is opening a door they have avoided for a very long time. And once that door opens completely, there may be no turning back. What your soulmate did not expect was that hiding their feelings would eventually create a problem they could no longer control. For a long time, they believed silence was the safest choice. Every emotion they refused to acknowledge seemed easier than facing the uncertainty that came with honesty. Whenever feelings surfaced, they pushed them back down. Whenever memories returned, they distracted themselves. Whenever their heart tried to speak, their mind immediately stepped in with reasons to remain guarded. This became a habit, a routine, a way of protecting themselves from questions they did not feel ready to answer. But recently, that strategy has stopped working the way it once did. Instead of becoming weaker, their emotions have become more noticeable. Instead of fading into the background, they have started demanding attention. Small things now affect them in ways they never expected. A random thought can completely change the direction of their day. A familiar memory can suddenly bring back emotions they thought had disappeared. Even moments that seem ordinary can unexpectedly remind them of everything they have been trying so hard not to feel. The more they experience this, the more they realize that the feelings they have been hiding never actually left. They were simply waiting for the moment when they could no longer be ignored, because your heart needs this right now. There is a major difference between suppressing a feeling and healing a feeling. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that. For a long time, they mistook silence for progress. They assumed that because they were not expressing their emotions, those emotions were becoming less important. But now they are discovering that hidden feelings often continue growing beneath the surface. They continue developing in private. They continue influencing thoughts, decisions, and emotions even when nobody else can see it happening. And listen to this. One of the biggest challenges they are facing right now is the realization that they have spent more energy hiding the truth than they ever spent understanding it. Think about that for a moment. Instead of asking themselves why the feelings remained, they focused on controlling them. Instead of exploring what their heart was trying to tell them, they focused on keeping everything contained. Recently, they have started questioning whether that approach actually helped them at all. And the answer they keep arriving at is uncomfortable. The truth is that avoidance never gave them peace. It only delayed a conversation they eventually needed to have with themselves. The more they reflect on this, the more they notice how often these feelings have quietly influenced their life. Certain decisions now look different when viewed through this new perspective. Certain reactions make more sense. Certain moments they once dismissed suddenly carry new meaning. It is as though they are uncovering evidence that their heart has been trying to communicate with them for much longer than they realized. Every discovery points toward the same conclusion. The emotions they thought they could control have been shaping their journey all along, because your heart needs this right now. The truth has a remarkable way of making itself known. It does not always arrive through dramatic events. Sometimes it arrives through repetition, through patterns, through emotions that refuse to disappear no matter how much time passes. Your soulmate is seeing those patterns now. They are beginning to recognize that what they feel is not temporary. It is not random. And it is not something they can simply switch off whenever they choose. What surprises them most is how tired they have become of carrying everything alone. Keeping feelings hidden requires constant effort. It requires constant monitoring of thoughts, emotions, and reactions. It requires pretending certain things do not matter when deep down they clearly do. Recently, that effort has become exhausting. The walls they built around their emotions are starting to feel less like protection and more like a burden. Every day that passes makes it harder to maintain the same distance they once relied on. And listen to this. A powerful shift is beginning to take place inside them. Instead of asking how to continue hiding what they feel, they are starting to ask why they are hiding it in the first place. That question is changing everything. Because once a person begins questioning the purpose of their emotional defenses, those defenses start losing their power. Your soulmate is approaching that stage now. The reasons that once justified silence are becoming weaker. The excuses that once seemed convincing are becoming harder to believe. Now they find themselves standing between two choices. One choice is familiar. Continue hiding, continue suppressing, continue pretending everything is under control. The other choice feels uncertain, but it also feels honest. And for the first time in a very long time, honesty is becoming more appealing than avoidance. That realization is creating pressure inside them, unlike anything they have experienced before. Because once the heart starts demanding truth, keeping it hidden becomes almost impossible. And what they are about to admit to themselves next may completely transform the way they see this connection moving forward. There is a moment that changes everything, and for your soulmate, that moment has finally arrived. After spending so much time hiding, suppressing, and trying to control their emotions, they have reached a point where they can no longer deny what their heart has been saying all along. What makes this moment so significant is that it did not happen because someone forced them to face the truth. It did not happen because circumstances suddenly changed. It happened because maintaining the illusion became harder than accepting reality. The emotional weight they have been carrying for so long has finally become impossible to ignore. For a long time, your soulmate lived in a state of internal conflict. One part of them knew exactly how they felt. That part never changed. It remained steady beneath the surface, regardless of what was happening around them. But another part of them kept searching for reasons not to trust those feelings. They questioned themselves constantly. They questioned the connection. They questioned whether what they felt was real, whether it was practical, whether it was worth acknowledging. This ongoing battle created confusion that lasted far longer than it should have. Yet recently, something inside them has become tired of arguing with the truth, because your heart needs this right now. There comes a time when people stop looking for evidence against what they feel and start recognizing the evidence that has been there from the beginning. Your soulmate is reaching that stage. They are beginning to notice that despite all their efforts to move in different directions emotionally, they always end up confronting the same reality. The feelings remain. The connection remains. The significance remains. No matter how much time passes, those core truths continue returning. And listen to this. The breakthrough did not happen all at once. It happened through a series of realizations. They began noticing how often their thoughts returned to this connection without being invited. They began noticing how certain emotions still carried the same intensity they carried long ago. They began noticing that every attempt to explain away their feelings only led them back to the same place. Eventually, they reached a point where denying the truth required more effort than accepting it. That realization alone has been incredibly powerful. What shocked them most was discovering that much of their emotional struggle had nothing to do with the connection itself. The struggle came from resistance. It came from trying to fight something that was never asking to be fought. The feelings were not creating the pain. The resistance to those feelings was. Once they understood that everything started changing, they stopped treating their emotions like a problem that needed solving. They stopped viewing their heart as something that needed to be controlled. Instead, they began listening, because your heart needs this right now. Acceptance is often misunderstood. People think acceptance means having all the answers. It does not. Acceptance simply means being honest about what exists. Your soulmate is learning that lesson. They do not suddenly know how everything will unfold. They do not suddenly have complete certainty about the future. What they do have is clarity about what they feel, and that clarity is more valuable than they realize. As they continue reflecting, they are starting to see how much energy they spent trying to become someone who felt differently. Think about that for a moment. Instead of accepting their emotions, they spent years attempting to reshape them. They tried to convince themselves that certain feelings were no longer important. They tried to convince themselves that certain emotions should disappear. But feelings do not operate according to logic alone. The heart does not simply obey commands because the mind requests it. And now your soulmate understands that better than ever. And listen to this. One realization keeps returning to them again and again. If these feelings were not real, they would have faded naturally. If the connection truly lacked significance, it would have lost its emotional impact over time. Yet the opposite happened. The more life moved forward, the more obvious certain truths became. The connection continued carrying meaning. The emotions continued carrying weight. The bond continued demanding recognition. That realization has become impossible to dismiss. Now your soulmate stands in a completely different place than they did before. They are no longer asking whether they feel something. They already know the answer. They are no longer debating whether the connection matters. They already understand that it does. The real question now is what happens when someone finally admits a truth they have spent so long trying to hide. Because once honesty enters the picture, everything changes. And your soulmate is beginning to realize that admitting the truth to themselves was only the first step. What comes next may require even greater courage than everything they have faced so far. The most difficult part of this journey is not realizing the truth. The most difficult part is deciding what to do once the truth has been realized. That is exactly where your soulmate finds themselves now. After finally admitting what they feel, after finally accepting what their heart has been trying to communicate for so long, they are discovering that awareness comes with its own challenges. It is one thing to acknowledge emotions in private. It is another thing entirely to live honestly with those emotions every day. And recently, that challenge has become impossible to avoid. For a long time, hiding their feelings felt like a form of protection. They convinced themselves that silence gave them control. They believed that keeping everything inside prevented disappointment, vulnerability, and uncertainty. In many ways, those emotional walls became familiar. They became part of how your soulmate navigated the world. Whenever feelings became intense, the walls went up. Whenever emotions became complicated, the walls became stronger. This pattern repeated itself so many times that it almost became automatic. But something unexpected has happened. The walls that once felt protective are no longer providing comfort. Instead, they are creating frustration because your heart needs this right now. There comes a point when emotional defenses stop serving the purpose they were built for. What once protected us can eventually begin limiting us. Your soulmate is beginning to experience that realization. Every time they try to return to old habits, something feels different. The strategies that once helped them avoid difficult emotions no longer bring relief. The distractions no longer work the same way. The excuses no longer sound convincing. The more aware they become of their true feelings, the harder it becomes to pretend those feelings do not exist. And listen to this. One of the biggest changes happening inside them is that they are no longer afraid of the feelings themselves. For a long time, they believed the emotions were the problem. They believed that acknowledging them would create chaos or uncertainty. But now, they are starting to see things differently. The emotions were never the real burden. The burden was carrying them alone. The burden was constantly monitoring every thought, every reaction, every feeling in an effort to maintain control. That constant effort has become exhausting. As a result, your soulmate is experiencing a growing desire for authenticity. Not because they suddenly have all the answers, but because they are tired of pretending. They are tired of acting as though certain emotions do not matter when deep down they clearly do. They are tired of creating distance where their heart wants closeness. They are tired of suppressing truths that continue resurfacing no matter how often they are pushed away. This growing desire for honesty is becoming stronger with each passing day, because your heart needs this right now. Honesty has a unique kind of power. Once a person experiences even a small amount of emotional clarity, it becomes very difficult to return to confusion. Your soulmate is discovering that firsthand. The more honest they become with themselves, the less appealing emotional avoidance becomes. The more they acknowledge their feelings, the less sense it makes to continue hiding them. Every step toward truth makes the old patterns feel weaker, and listen to this. There are moments now when your soulmate catches themselves imagining what life would feel like if they no longer carried this secret alone. Not necessarily because they expect immediate answers, not necessarily because they expect everything to become easy, but because they are beginning to understand the freedom that comes from authenticity. They are beginning to understand that expressing the truth and living the truth are often less painful than constantly concealing it. What surprises them most is how naturally this shift is happening. They are not forcing themselves to change. They are not trying to create a breakthrough. The breakthrough is happening on its own. The truth has simply become too obvious to ignore. The feelings have become too real to dismiss. The connection has become too significant to reduce to a passing emotion. And because of that, every day brings them closer to a moment they once thought they would avoid forever. Now your soulmate stands on the edge of a turning point. The fear that once controlled their decisions is losing its influence. The silence that once felt safe is losing its appeal. What is growing in its place is courage. A quiet but powerful courage that comes from finally knowing what is true. And as that courage continues growing, they are approaching a moment where hiding will no longer feel natural. A moment where honesty becomes stronger than fear. A moment where everything they have kept locked inside for so long may finally need to be expressed. Because some truths can only remain hidden for a limited amount of time before they begin demanding to be heard. And now your soulmate has arrived at the moment that everything has been leading toward. Not because life suddenly forced them there, not because someone else pushed them there, but because the truth they have been carrying for so long has finally become stronger than the fear that kept it hidden. For a very long time, they believed they could continue living with these feelings quietly locked away. They believed they could acknowledge them privately while never allowing them to influence the direction of their life. Yet what they are discovering now is that certain emotions refuse to remain in the background forever. The more genuine they are, the more they demand to be recognized. What makes this moment so powerful is that your soulmate is no longer running from themselves. Think about how much has changed. There was a time when they questioned everything they felt. There was a time when they searched for reasons to dismiss their emotions. There was a time when they treated their heart like something that needed to be controlled rather than understood. But those days are slowly coming to an end. Through every lesson, every challenge, every period of uncertainty, they have been moving toward a realization that now feels impossible to ignore. The feelings never disappeared because they were never meant to disappear, because your heart needs this right now. One of the greatest forms of freedom a person can experience is emotional honesty. Not honesty with the world first, honesty with themselves. Your soulmate has reached that level of honesty. They are no longer pretending they feel less than they actually do. They are no longer minimizing emotions that continue showing up, no matter how much time passes. They are finally seeing the connection for what it truly is, instead of what they wished it would become. And that shift is changing everything inside them. And listen to this. The most remarkable part is that the truth no longer feels frightening the way it once did. For years, they assumed that acknowledging these feelings would create more confusion. Instead, it has created clarity. They assumed it would make them feel vulnerable. Instead, it has made them feel authentic. They assumed it would complicate their life. Instead, it has simplified things. Because once a person stops fighting what they know to be true, an enormous amount of energy becomes available. The energy that was once spent hiding can finally be spent understanding. Now your soulmate is beginning to see how much of their journey was preparing them for this exact moment. Every delay taught patience. Every challenge taught resilience. Every unanswered question forced deeper self-reflection. Even the periods that felt frustrating now seem to have served a purpose. They helped your soulmate become someone capable of recognizing the truth when it finally became impossible to deny. And now that truth stands directly in front of them, because your heart needs this right now. There is a major difference between feeling something and accepting something. Many people feel emotions for years without fully accepting them. Acceptance changes everything because it removes the internal conflict. It removes the constant argument between the heart and the mind. Your soulmate is experiencing that transformation. The battle that once consumed so much of their attention is starting to fade. The resistance is fading. The denial is fading. The excuses are fading. What remains is a growing sense of certainty about what they truly feel. And listen to this. They are beginning to realize that hiding their emotions never actually protected them. It only postponed growth. It only delayed understanding. It only delayed a truth that was always waiting patiently beneath the surface. Now that they see this clearly, continuing to hide feels less natural than being honest. Continuing to suppress feels more difficult than acknowledging. Every day that passes strengthens that realization. This is why your soulmate is standing at such an important turning point. They are no longer focused on whether their feelings exist. They know they do. They are no longer focused on whether the connection matters. They know it does. The question that remains is how they choose to live with that truth moving forward. And for the first time in a very long time, they are considering a future built on authenticity rather than avoidance. What happens next is something even your soulmate cannot fully predict. But one thing has become absolutely clear. The version of them that spent years hiding, denying, and suppressing their true emotions is slowly disappearing. In its place is someone willing to face the truth, someone willing to trust what they feel, and someone willing to stop treating their heart like an enemy. That transformation is already happening. The walls are falling. The silence is weakening. The truth is becoming stronger. And now that your soulmate has finally accepted what they feel, they are discovering something life-changing. Some emotions can be hidden for a season, but they can never be hidden forever. Eventually the truth finds its voice, and your soulmate is closer than ever to letting that voice be heard.